But the kid has no clue what you're talking about, because they are just emotion. And so their mood flies from one thing to another, because there is no das at all there. Al-Kain Eina Kotten Bar Onshin. This is why a child is not responsible, morally, for their actions. We teach responsibility, but they actually are not liable for what they do. They don't have das. And if you don't have das, you actually cannot be responsible for what you're doing. So, a child under bar bas mitzvah, the averos they do are the parents' averos, not the children's averos, because the child can't be held responsible. They don't have das, so they can't direct their emotions, so they can't actually control themselves. We train them to control themselves. They start to develop that, but ultimately, they're not a bar das. They're not able to override their emotion on their own. They can't be expected to. So, a child is like a bundle of emotion that the parent's intellect has to try and keep in check and control and direct. In order for when they reach maturity, they can start doing it on their own. Their own intellect will kick in. The das will be able to direct their emotion. But they can't do that until then.
Is this Noshim Datim Kalas why women can't be witnesses?
It's a part of it. I mean, it's a bit of a different topic, but generally in testimony, a person has to be completely objective. And if there's any reason to suggest that the person may not be objective, so then we invalidate them, man or a woman. So, das is possibly that, an emotional element, possibly. So,
it's not a very flattering thing to hear, I have to say. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
You took it personally?
Yes, I did.
I saw it I just saw it as an interesting idea.
Right.
But now this is the opposite of what we hear. When Mashiach comes, the femininity
He's
of
responding that way. No. He's responding that way to illustrate that the sentence is true. You took it personally. Your das is all over the place. You're just connected with this idea. No, he's not connected with the idea. That's just an interesting idea.
But he doesn't subscribe to it. It's just a thought. Put it out there.
There you go. By objecting to the statement of Nashim Datin Kalas, you just showed how kal your das is.
But the Siddur they could out to destroy our, the can on the country.
No,
so.
that's true. Neither can Kevin Rod. He must have that.
Anyway, it's a subject that does deserve further investigation. But okay. Ikar amoichin de katnas u'b'chinis hashikha, v'ikar amoichin de gadlus u'das. We're going to see, by the way, this Noshim Datin Kalas is going to be important as we go on. It's an important concept that will be very relevant as we move ahead, because we'll see that whether that statement applies to every woman in the world is actually not relevant. It's talking about the feminine power in the world, and the feminine power in the world is emotion as opposed to intellect, and that's what Datin Kalas means. But we'll see that as we go along.
But that's so weird, because women are Bina. And Bina corresponds to...
it's like everything. Within the world of intellect, there's masculine and feminine. Within the general picture, there's masculine and feminine, which is intellect and emotion. And within each detail, there's masculine and feminine. You can always divide it down. Okay. So So what comes out is that small-mindedness is synonymous with forgetfulness. Meaning, moichin de katnos means when you're not being directed by your mind. That is when you forget reality. It's slipped out of your mind. Whereas ikra moichin de gadlus wa das. But moichin de gadlus, clarity of mind, is when you have das. When you're connected to truth. When it's in front of your eyes and you don't forget it. So everything we've said till now is just to explain what the word das means. It means where the intellect is not just knowing something, but it is aware of it, connected to it. It is living living it, where you see it in front of your own eyes, where an idea has become alive. That's what das is. That's what the power of das is. Okay, there's a new sentence about 15 lines down. The line starts v'hispashtus yisera, and there's a full stop. See the word v'hispashtus yisera at the beginning of the line? V'nei, kol anal b'pirush das lamata yuvan mizen hanimshul lamayla. All of this explanation of what das is down here in our reality will give us an insight on what das means up there in the divine reality. Like we quoted earlier, the Mishnah's Chasidim, this Kabbalah Sefer, says the Kavana when you're shaking the Lulav is we're trying to draw down das to nukva, draw down das into the feminine. Because the feminine aspect on its own is light on das, it needs an injection of das. So we're trying to draw das to nukva. Because if you have the power of nukva, which is the feminine power of emotion, but if that power has das injected in it, then you've got a whole different product. So we'll understand what that means, but let's keep it on hold. First we have to understand what it means, that it says in Mishnah's Chasidim, we quoted earlier, that the nukva of Zah, the feminine aspect of Zah, of the emotions of Atzilus, stands in the chest of Zah. The nukva as it is in the chest. What is this language here, this imagery, this Kabbalistic imagery about nukva, the feminine, as it is in the chest of Zah? It says that the heavens were created with the word of Hashem. We know that this is referring to the creation of all the worlds and all the angels and everything that there is in the world's Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. All of them were created, not just our physical world, but the entire ladder of creation, the whole Hishtalshalis, was all created through Dibur Ha'elin, divine speech. Hashem said and it was. Like it says in Sefer Yitzirah, the book of formation, a Kabbalistic work that describes the creative power in the universe, Kavan B'peh, that it was all established by the mouth. The entire world was spoken into existence. Not just our world, all worlds. Which generally speaking is referring to the 10 utterances of creation. Let there be light, and there was light. It's known from our sages also that malachim, angels, were created by supernal speech, divine speech. The heavens were created, and all of the hosts of heavens, the angels as well. In the 10 utterances of creation, we read it, we say, Hashem said, let there be light, let the earth sprout vegetation, let there be fish swimming in the sea. But when you read into it, Chazal show that those 10 utterances include all of creation, including divine, heavenly creations like angels. Like it says, and flying things should fly in the air. When Hashem said flying things flying in the air, say Chazal, that's talking about the angel Michael and the angel Gabriel. It's not just talking about birds. It's talking about also about the angelic beings.
They were created at the same time as birds?
Some say on the second day of creation.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The Gemara says there's two opinions.
Didn't Hashem turn to the Malachim and say, let us make the world?
Man.
No.
Tzaddikim, he said, let us make the world. Or should I make the world?
But therefore they were already tzaddikim.
Yeah. There are different levels of Malachim as well. There are Malachim that precede the world of Bria. But
I can't understand anything beyond what's around me, like angels and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there like
Nothing to be scared of.
something to learn? Like, I don't know. Afterlife, like it's just so ununderstandable. Like, I don't know. It's like, how do we know? Okay, it's so off topic. Don't worry about it. It's just so off topic. How do you know it's really gonna be alright? Like after, you know? Like, I don't know.
You have to make it alright here, then it'll be right after.
Just trying. Anyway.
Okay, so to understand this, that through Hashem's speech, everything, the angels, all the worlds were created. Now let's look at human speech. We see an interesting thing about speech. The power of speech which is in our mouth, is dependent on the air, the breath, that actually originates in our heart. Which is in the chest. There is a passage that allows air from the heart to reach the mouth, the voice box, to express. And that's where speech comes from. Now, you're not going into the biology of it, the connection between the heart and the lungs and the oxygen, but the concept is that speech, even though speech is in the mouth, which comes from breath, but the original origin of that breath is actually in the heart. Now, he proves it. And he'll explain what it means. Again, we're not doing a biology lesson here. We're talking about where the power of speech originates. You can see this very clearly. When a person is happy, is good-hearted, so then the power of speech is expressed in an exaggerated way, and they just don't stop talking. when you're happy, you blabber and you talk more and you say much more and you're much more open. Yeah, and you say things you wouldn't normally say because you're in a good mood. The things usually you hold back, you say them and you're more expressive. Speech is very much connected to your emotional state. When you're in a happy mood, you speak more. Because your heart is giving off warmth, is giving off air. But and so therefore when the heart is joyous, then the air, the fumes are coming off the heart, the warmth is coming off the heart, it's more expressed, your heart is more expressed, your speech is more broad and exaggerated, you speak more. But if you're in a bad mood, if you're sad, angry, feeling down, then the air of the heart has become shriveled up and held back, it's withdrawn. Then the air is not strong enough to push through the chest upwards towards the voice box. And you can't talk. You're not in the mood of talking. You don't say.
Well, some people talk a lot when they say dreadful things. Like,
they're not expressing.
Right.
So what comes out is speech. Even though speech is in the mouth, the energy behind the speech is actually coming from the heart in the chest. This is all a metaphor for above as well.
What does Hevel mean? Hevel?
The Hevel means the breath, or yeah. This is understood about Malchus d'Atzilus, Malchus of Atzilus, the last sphera in the world of Atzilus, is called the divine speech. Malchus Peh. Malchus is the speech, the last sphera which expresses the powers of that which is above it. So the 10 sayings are expressions of Malchus, the 10th of the spheres. Another name for Malchus is Nukva de Zah, the feminine side of Zah. Malchus is the feminine sphera. Kiyadua. The B'chinas Zah, B'chinas Midas, Datzilus, Shnikra Leva Elyon, B'chinas Chazed de Zah. Okay, so if Malchus is the feminine aspect, so what is the Chazeh of Zah? What is the chest of Zah? It's talking about the breath that comes from the heart that energizes the speech. The Adam Atachten. The Alkei Nikra Malchus Nekeva Nekev Hey. Commercial Kosa Beitz Chaim. The Keser Nukva Dovik Bechaza Dezar. And so it explains in the Rizal's writings that the Malchus is energized by the heart, by the lev, by the chest. Meaning the emotions, the higher emotions, actually energize speech, behind the power of speech. So, or in Kabbalistic terms, the keser of nukva is in the chaza of zah. The crown, the energizing power, the power behind nukva, behind malchus, behind speech, is in the chest, in the higher emotional faculties of Atzilus. Like we just described about a human being, that our speech is just words, but what inspires and energizes speech is your feelings, your emotions, your heart.
Okay, just say the Kesser thing again. Where did Kesser come from?
Because Kesser, he was talking about the energizing force behind Nukva is actually in the Chaza of Zah. So in Kabbalistic terms, the way it's described is that you have Nukva, which has its own 10 spheres. Malchus has its own 10 spheres. Zah has its own 10 spheres. But they interlink. Zah is the higher midas.
Just has the word
Chesed till Yesod.
Okay, all the midas until
So even though Zah is the higher midas, the 6 midas, Malchus is the last of the midas.
Right.
We look at them as being separate entities, but they're actually interlinked. The highest element of Nukva, of Malchus, is actually in the chest, in the emotions of Zah. Which means, in our world, what that means is that speech is a different faculty to emotion. Emotion is our inner self. Speech is an external expression. But speech, the energizing force behind speech, is actually emotion.
But what does that have to do with Kesser? I thought Kesser is higher than even intellect.
No, we're saying Kesser within Nukva, of Malchus.
Oh, okay.
The Kesser of Nukva.
Got it.
Each one of these spheres has its own 10 spheres. So the Kesser of Malchus is in the emotion faculties of Zah.
It's an interlinked chain, and
Correct.
it interlinks higher up than you think.
The highest element of the lower thing is connected to the middle of the higher thing, not the bottom of it. That's what a link. That's what Ishtalshlus means. The top of the bottom is higher than the bottom of the top.
Can you say that again?
That's great.
If you have a chain hanging off the ceiling, so each link has a link below it. But is this below link below the one above it?
In other words, the links are not like
it's not below it.
No,
Some of it's below it, some of it's higher than it. So the top of this is higher than the bottom of this.
Top of this.
The top of the lower link is higher than the bottom of the upper link. So you have in Hishtalshlus you have Zah and you have Malchus.
Right.
You have the masculine emotions, which are Chesed to Yesod, and you have the feminine, which is Malchus.
That's right.
Each one of them have their own 10 spheres. There's Keser of Malchus and there's Chachmina. There's the whole system within Malchus. There's a system within Zah. Keser of Malchus is in the Chazeh of Zah. The crown of Malchus, the highest level of Malchus, is in the chest of Zah, which is the emotion. Not the lowest, it's higher than the lowest. It's not in Malchus of Zah, it's in the Chazeh, the chest, the emotions of Zah.
And is Zah the one just above Malchus, or is it way up?
No, it's just above. Just above.
It's 6 above.
But, it's 6 above. But as
Yeah,
one
that's what I was
unit.
asking. It's 6 above.
The six.
It's like a big link
Correct.
instead of a little one.
Correct. So what we illustrated this in our own self, that you have your emotions and you have your power of speech. They're actually totally different realms. Emotions are your character. Speech is your behavior, is what you're doing at a certain time. You're just talking. Talking is a very external expression. Feeling is an internal expression. But we said that speech itself is animated by emotion. meaning that when you're in a happy, joyous, jolly mood, you speak more. You have more words. When you're more withdrawn, you speak less. I mean, we are used to this, but didn't have to be this way. Why can't you be in a terribly sad mood, but you speak exactly the same? Because speech is not emotion. Speech is just projection of words. But no, they're intertwined. That speech is an expression, is animated, is energized by emotion. That nukva is connected to the chazeh, to the chest, where the emotions are.
So joyous speech is on the feminine side?
All speech is feminine.
All speech is feminine.
Malchus is peh.
So
Nukva
when
is...
Hashem created the world, the whole universe, when he made the creations with the 10 utterances, it was
Yes. What are those 10 utterances? That is the feminine...
side of Hashem?
Yes, because he's talking.
Okay.
He's talking
He's
men
expressing,
have
he's
from
expressing
a
himself.
good place. He was happy. That he expressed anything was a...
So what we're going to see is that words themselves, the word is parav. A word by itself doesn't have emotion. Emotion has to be drawn into the word. That there's nukva, which is just speech, and then there's the chazeh of nukva. There's the nukva as it is in the chazeh. There's the nukva as it expresses an emotion. So like we said, when you're in a bad mood, you speak, but less. When you're happy, you speak more. That energizes the words. So let's do a few more lines and it'll become a little bit clearer. We'll finish the paragraph. Valke nikra malchus nekeva nekavay. Why do we do that? The fourth last line. That, like we said about speech, that speech is an expression of emotion, dafka. It's from the chest, from the heart. The power of speech is called the keser of nukva. It's called the speaking spirit. Which is higher than just normal speech. We're talking about the divine power of speech. That's all explained elsewhere. But now we understood some of the statement in Mishnah's Chasidim which we began with, when we talked about the Kavana of shaking the Lulav. In Mishnah's Chasidim it said, that the nukva of Zah, the lower sphera of Malchus, which is the feminine partner of Zah, stands in the chest of Zah, in the upper spheres of Zah. And the reason why nukva rises up to connect with the chazah, the chest, is because it is trying to receive power and life force from the intellect. Top of the next page. In order that the speech which creates the world should be constant and maintain the energy in the world without being interrupted. Meaning, let's just get this a little bit clear, that, like we said with human speech, to continue the conversation, you have to be in the mood. If you're not in the mood, so then the conversation ends. When you're talking to somebody and they're just not into it, so then the conversation ends and it's finished. If you want the conversation to continue, you have to arouse the mood. The words have to be connected to emotion. The emotion has to be expressed, then you can speak. If the emotion is lost, if the feeling is dead, so then the conversation stops. This world is, after all, a conversation. It's Hashem talking. It's not just that Hashem once said the world into existence, He is constantly saying the world into existence. And so the divine energy behind this universe needs to connect to emotion, divine emotion, in order to be maintained. If it stopped, if the words were not backed up by emotion, so then the world cannot continue to exist. So in order to maintain creation, our avoda is to try and connect nukva to its chazeh, to the chazeh of Zah. That the malchus should be connected to the emotion. This is something that we spoke about once with the Rosh Hashanah Maamar, that I think was last year, that Rosh Hashanah is called Binyan Malchus, recreating the Malchus, the speech that Hashem created the world, re-inspiring Hashem to talk the world in creation. If he's not inspired to create the world, if he's not moved by it, if he's not into it, if it's not making him happy, so he'll stop talking. And if he stops talking, the conversation's over. Big time. So our avodah is to connect Malchus with the emotion, to excite Hashem about the world. And we do that through Torah mitzvahs. And specifically, we do that through shaking the Lulav. As we will see, that the Lulav is bringing Das into the Nukva as it connects to the Chazeh. So the Nukva connects to the Chazeh receives from Das, and the world continues because Hashem is inspired. How that works, we haven't explained yet. That will be in the rest of the moment.
So interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. And what's the nukva again? Sorry.
The feminine.
Malchus.
Malchus.